Great. So agenda today, I think we are running a little bit behind time, which I anticipated anyway, but I think we'll be fine. So we'll go through some introductions, we'll ask for some feedback on the app, and then it'll be really interesting to hear about your, I'm sure we're all pretty sick of it by now, but it'll be interesting to hear about your thoughts and sort of experiences on the impact of the pandemic. And then we'll have a couple of minutes just to close out as well. Okay, so okay, and I do obviously want to should have started with this actually, but to say thank you firstly and foremost, firstly for giving up some time of your day today, but also for participating in the My Melanoma app study. This is really useful, and this sort of feedback session we're hoping to set up as a regular thing. So it's really great to be speaking to some of you. So introductions in the chat box just over the next couple of minutes. Some of you have already done this. Just to introduce yourself by your name if you're comfortable. I mean, I think it's all showing our names, and also how long you've been using the Melanoma app.
I don't have the ability to type. I'm not quite sure why. My hubby, who is my technical support, is not here. I'm happy to answer if you don't mind that.
That's fine. Go ahead. Okay, Melanie.
So I'm Melanie, best known as Mel Crick. I have had melanoma for 6.5 years and just finished 2 years of treatment with pembrolizumab, and now the side effects are beginning to hit. I've been proper poorly, but hopefully that will be sorted fairly soon. And I've been using the app from the beginning because James gave me a card and said, do it. My brother's involved.
I love James. and I love Mel as well. She's good.
Great. So that's me.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. Great.
I've typed my message, but it's not sending.
You can always rely. Listen, come on, girls. Don't be letting the side down. I'm watching the chat, and I can see Dave Haywood and bloody Adrian Marvel having a right old little laugh, saying, "Ooh, she'll pay for technical support and buy a ticket." And we can't even get bloody type the message in.
Yeah, well, I did type a message, and I think it came. Yeah, my hi went through, but this bloody one's not gone through at all.
Did you do it to all panelists and attendees? There's a drop-down menu. It says 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Press send.
It's an uptick.
It's send, and it's not sending.
Mine didn't.
Okay. Well, you're more than welcome to, if it's not working, Son, or anyone else, feel free to.
Yeah. I think it's working for me. Yeah. But no?
Type in it and then hit enter. It usually goes in.
Okay, so we have, so hi Phil, Adrian, Dave, Elizabeth, Susan, Linda.
I was working now.
Karen, Andrew, Sonia, great. Arlene, hi.
Hello.
Hi. Is there anyone else? Great. Hi, everyone. Well, it is really great to meet you. Okay. So, without further ado, I think we'll move on to some more of the agenda here. So, I'm going to give a bit of a few words about today and about what we've been doing and what we're hoping to sort of get out of today, and then we'll go on to some other questions. So since we launched the app in 2017, we continue to seek feedback from our users as the study progresses to help improve the value of the app. We want to promote ongoing engagement as well, and make sure that the app is as user-friendly for you and as helpful for you as possible. And that's very important to us. So last summer we launched the medical profile in the tracker tab, and that allows you to record sort of your treatment and staging and that sort of thing. And I'll go over that a bit more in a minute. And today we hope to understand how you interact with the app, but specifically the medical profile, any challenges you face, any additional features that you may find useful, and then, as I mentioned, also the pandemic, how that's affected your... Sorry, Mel?
Sorry, it's all right, my hubby just walked back in. Tech support has arrived.
Excellent. And how the pandemic, if applicable, how it's affected your diagnosis, your treatment, access to care, and also sort of mental well-being and psychological impacts there too. And I just see another one of my colleagues has joined. Catherine, hello.
Hello, all. Sorry, I'm late.
And
I wish I had a good excuse, but I was jumping meeting to meeting.
Mark and Catherine, do you want to give a quick intro? We've gone through and given some from our side and in the chat as well, but do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So I don't want to take up too much time. I know that time is precious, but my name is Catherine Bottomley. I'm Director of Patient-Centred Outcomes at ViteAccess. And I'm responsible for developing the content of our apps and making sure that that includes the patient perspective.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Larkin. I'm CEO of ViteAccess. Know some of you already. I see Adrian's name there, very familiar with. So thank you all very much for your time in being with us here today. So I've been involved in this study from the beginning. Pleasure of working with Di and Jill from the beginning of this study. So really looking forward to your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Oh, we got some delightful music.
Sorry, that was landline. I had to ignore it.
Nice.
Casey, can I just say, so why don't you mute everyone? I know that sounds awful, but why don't you mute everyone, and then when you're ready for your Q&A, or however you're going to run this, but it's just easier then, isn't it? And you can
yeah, let me see.
We can all mute ourselves.
You're so good, Linda.
Yeah, I can't see. Sorry, not technologically savvy today, but I can't see a mute all button at the minute. So yeah, I will leave it up to yourselves to do that. Okay, cool. So we'll move on to the app feedback then. Introductions all out of the way. So hopefully you can all see my screen, but the medical profile includes 6 sections. As I said, you can find it under the tracker section where the arrow is showing. And then on the right-hand side of the screen here, we've got this visualization which a colleague of ours has put together of the 6 different sections. So you're actually getting a first glance of this. This will go out in our newsletter and out on social media in the coming weeks. But basically, it's a visualization of what the medical profile sort of represents and sort of small nuggets of data that we have from the medical profile. So we have personal information, lifestyle, diagnosis and staging, treatment, surgeries, and hospitalizations. So as well as the 3 surveys that we ask you to complete in the app, the medical profile section is really important for users to complete. From our perspective, it helps us and other researchers understand the data on a more detailed level, such as linking sort of quality of life data and side effects with certain stages and treatments for melanoma. But as you can see, the percentages around sort of the outside, we find this section is not as well engaged with as the surveys. So for example, you can see personal information and lifestyle, it's over 60%, surgery is over 60%, and whereas sort of diagnosis and staging is 28% of our users have sort of currently completed this section. So it makes it a little more difficult to understand from a data perspective. So if we don't have, for example, staging information, then we're not sure maybe how someone's quality of life at stage 2 might be different to stage 4. It is quite a detailed infographic there, but the idea is just to give a sort of representation of what the medical profile, the different data that we pull from it, because obviously we see a different perspective to you on the app. So just trying to help it to hang together from your perspective too. So
do you want feedback as you go along or at the end?
So good question. The way that the session will sort of proceed from here is I've got some questions to go through, and I can open the floor to whoever wants to jump in, but I may also sort of pick out someone's name to give their feedback. If you don't have any thoughts, if I call out your name, or don't want to answer or prefer to write it in the chat box, that's totally fine. But obviously we want to give everyone a chance to give their thoughts as well. So yes, so first question, open to, I give this one to anyone. What are your what do you think about the medical profile, and what are your thoughts around the medical profile in the app?
I think
Go first, or somebody else has jumped in. That's okay.
No, go ahead.
You sure? Okay. I found when filling in the personal information, it could be because of where I'm located, a bit in the sticks in North Devon. I'm actually sort of referred to the dermatology clinic, which is part of a health centre in Barnstaple. Even though I had my surgery in Exeter, they've discharged me now and I go to Barnstaple. So people involved in your care, it doesn't give you the option to put down the type of role of the person that I'm seeing. I've just defaulted to oncology nurse, but she's not an oncology nurse, she's just a dermatologist.
Okay.
There is different sections there, though, isn't there? You can add. There's a list of what you can pick. And there's a nurse.
Really,
it's not.
Oh, I see. Oh, oncologist. Hang on. So you'd choose nurse there, would you? Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be worth having a free text field?
There's another field.
There is. Yeah. Just looking now.
Oh, that says.
Is there a free field? Is there? Oh, I see. Other. Ah, yeah. So I could put in dermatology nurse, could I? Or
Casey, can you free type?
yeah, you can.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So just for clarity, because obviously I don't know whether everyone's on the app on the phone as we're going through this. But if it's for me as the kind of conduit between Vite Access and the patient community, if it is still something that is not clear, now's the time to kind of say it, because, you know, if there's something that we've got to do to get it out there and say, you know, it is a free text facility, or should it not be classed as other? So I think from my point is what is causing a little bit of a bottleneck there, if that is the case. If it's happening to you, it could be happening to other patients.
To be honest with you, that what you've just said there, the chap, I don't know who it was. Yeah, it makes sense now. Whether that wasn't there when I filled it in first off and it's been updated, I don't know. It could have just been me being a bit unuser friendly with it. But the other quick question I've got is under details about you. It's got hospital or clinic. Like I say, I had my operations for the WLE and node, the biopsy in Exeter, but they've discharged me now and I'm back with the dermatology department at the health centre in Barnstaple. So should I change that? Do you want me to change that? Would that help, or doesn't it matter?
Yeah, so that's a good point actually, because for the medical profile, one aspect of it is sort of keeping it up to date with I suppose what's going on with your care and your treatment um, and those sorts of things. So I suppose so. In answer to your question, yes, if there are any updates to your care or change in treatment or hospitalizations, etc., then yeah, please feel free to make the updates. I suppose that's another question actually to send out is how often do you as participants in the app sort of update the medical profile section? Was it a complete sections when you first registered and then you haven't gone back to it, or do you?
Well, I haven't gone back to it. Definitely not. I completed it and haven't gone back to look at it because I always felt it was more important to complete the surveys than actually go into my own personal medical profile and have a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth putting reminders on? You update your profile, every 3 months or every 6 months.
I get a reminder to tell me to update my profile every so often, and that that would be a good thing. But my problem is that nothing's changed.
Just
so
ignore it.
Just ignore it. But I can't really update it if there's nothing to update, can I?
Yeah.
Can I just jump in there as someone who's had stage 4 melanoma for quite a long time? I actually lose the will to live filling out that, because I've had so many things the matter with me, so many, because I just started on a single tablet, then went to Dab and Tram, and then one to IPI, and then Cyberknife, and then Pembro, and writing all of that down. I mean, I personally, it reminds me of the state that I'm in. So it's not something that I would like to have to keep doing on a regular occasion unless there was a major change to my treatment, because it's just like confirming something that I would be quite happy to forget.
That's really useful feedback, Melanie. Thanks for sharing that. Just off
Because
the
you
back
only
of
have to
that.
put changes in, though, don't you? Rather than you don't have to re-input the whole.
Yeah, because the options could go.
How about if you update it when you've had your appointment with your consultant? That if there's any, you get into the way of doing that and go, well, I've been from an appointment, everything's there, and go on to your medical profile and go, or, good scan, good this, good that, or whatever.
I think a lot of it, so something that we discussed at the previous session on this, I think, and this is why the medical profile came in a bit more as a stronger item, is around what's the purpose of the application from whose perspective. So there are patients that have got one view of the application, and there's Vitaccess who've got a different view of the information. Now, it could be simply Vitaccess saying to patients, "Please, can you fill in a survey, every month?" That's the short answer. The benefit, I think, of this from a patient's perspective is it being able to be more patient-centric, and that then obviously there are the surveys associated with it as well. But if it's a patient-centric thing that allows you just to use it as a diary to record things as they happen, so that rather than filling it in after your oncology appointment, actually you should be filling it in before that to say, oh yeah, I had a really bad headache yesterday, or I had a bout of diarrhea, or whatever, and using it as an aid memoir for when you go to see your oncologist. From a patient's perspective, that would sort of give it benefit, and then from Vitaccess's perspective, it then milks the data from the back end of that and captures all of the data that people have been filling in from the surveys as well.
Yeah, and that's really how we started this. So back in 2017, when we were thinking about this study, for instance, one of the things we did when we had a couple of sessions with patients was say, well, how can we make this useful for you? Is there a way that we can help you take notes, for instance, and do stuff that you're already perhaps doing, but in a more systematic way. And so various patients said to us, well, one of the things, for instance, about pain, you know, you can see having an appointment with a clinician, the oncology nurse might say, well, how's your pain been? And people say, well, it's a bit tricky to reconstruct like that. So we said, well, actually, maybe we could do that very straightforwardly, just given a means of, you know, tracking pain. And then other suggestions for different symptoms were added based on, from suggestions from patients. So that was one of the things that one of the sort of use cases, if you want to put it in sort of techie terms, that we thought about at the beginning, to as a means of recording these things that could help with those clinical interactions.
Yeah, that's right, and I think that's where, you know, from my perspective, that's where it has got benefits and advantages, and I'm able to do that.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course.
I've just gone into the details about you to change the hospital or clinic from Exeter to Barnstable Dermatology. And as I start typing, it's coming up with a list of hospitals, which I don't think, because it's a medical centre, the dermatology from the North Devon Hospital was moved to a health centre.
Okay, so does that mean there's not something in the list that corresponds with what your centre
I'm
is?
just thinking, could that be made free form, or
Yeah, well, you know what, that's one of the most difficult. You'd think that would be easy, but actually that is one of the most difficult things to keep up to date, just for the reasons you've just mentioned, because things change, people change the names, etc. But if you could give us.
I see North Devon Hospitals come up, but the dermatology department is no longer there.
Okay.
But do you want me to just choose that just for?
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine. That would be absolutely fine. I mean, yeah, thank you.
It's only a minor thing, isn't it? You know, but
so there's those things there's no sort of centralized list that you can magically gets kept up to date by the NHS that takes into account all these tiny changes, unfortunately. So it's quite a minor point, but actually it's quite difficult to cover.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Thanks
I see, Mel, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Oh, sorry. No, that I just forgot to turn it off after I'd spoken. Sorry.
That's all right. And Catherine, did you have something you wanted to jump in, a question?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. So I was just going to follow up on what Melanie was saying, that it's obviously, important that we capture this data, but we're not wanting to remind people of things they don't want to be reminded about on a regular basis. So it's really important to hear about how we might strike that balance.
Could you do it as if you want to strike a balance? Have you got medical history to update? It doesn't give you don't have to do it, but it'll give you the prompt. Oh yeah, I could do that. It'll give you an option not to go into it, but remind you. Have you updated your medical profile recently? And you don't have to go through the recording again, because it does, as we've heard, it does upset some people. So that's an option.
And is there anything else that we can be saying to other users about, in terms of how to remind them of the importance of this section? Because obviously we know the data, we all know the data is important for the study. Is there anything that we should be saying differently?
Oh God. As someone who's been using this for nearly as long as it's been going, what might be quite useful when the Melanoma UK logo thing comes up, that maybe that the first page should be a bit more of a guidance, or instead of waiting to turn over and see, oh, you only need to put 1 to 10 on this or whatever, that you could explain that because I think people see a survey and they think they're going to be doing it for hours, whereas actually it's so well worded you can actually get through it quite quickly. And I just wondered if there was more of a guidance where people could be reassured that it isn't going to have them sitting there for hours and hours, and it's something they can, you know, bob onto while they're having a cup of tea in the afternoon. I mean, I don't think the program itself has changed hugely since I first joined. I think it's more user friendly in terms of being able to click on things, and I think it does pretty well describe, you know, how you feel on a particular day, what's been, you know, more troublesome, etc., etc. But I think sometimes you sort of feel like you've been pitched into one survey, and then there's something else, and then there's something else. Whereas if you had an introductory page to say, actually, you only need to do this particular one once a month, or you can do this one as often as you like, something along that line. I don't know how anybody else feels about it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Although most of the surveys, don't they come up with how many questions there's going to be before you start completing them?
Yeah, it does say the amount of time. There's a little bit of signposting about the amount of time it should take, and actually, often that time is more than it takes, because as you said, if you're familiar with them, you can rattle through them quite quickly usually. So we try and do that, but yeah.
Now, can I in, because do you know what? Honestly, you would not believe how much time we've spent on trying to reinforce this. Having said that, it is a really valid point, because even you, an active user who uses it all the time, that's something that we take for granted. You're using it and you kind of think, well, I know it only takes a couple of minutes, so no big deal. But,
well, it's only because I'm scared that James will come down and beat me with a stick.
Never mind, James. I get older, be no, I'm only kidding. But
I'll protect you. I'm bigger than him.
Oh, cheers, Mark.
But it is a really, honestly, it's a valid point. I am sitting here, and as much as I shouldn't really admit this, I'm sitting here because I am working with the guys at Bite Access to do a really user-friendly guide. And they're the kind of things we've got to get over to people. It is not going to take you forever to do these surveys, and it's quick, simple. The longest bit about the app is the bit of the introduction, putting your bits of detail in. That's the
yes
of the app. And it is that bit about how do we get over. I mean, I know that's not for kind of right now, but it is something that maybe I can take offline as well, and work with you guys in mates and try and get more people involved to say it's not a long process. It's the initial bit, but after that it's minutes, not minutes.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on people's outlook on surveys and how we address these things and research, because I don't think maybe many people really bite onto the fact that without this research, you know, melanoma is going to be tackled a lot quicker when they're taking such a wide field. I mean, obviously, having worked in the health service myself, I've always been very pro things like this. And I think I'm signed up to every scheme that's going at the moment. But I think it could also be you're a bit swamped with information at the start. So if your consultant shoves you the register leaflet at the same time as you've got your leaflet about your trial or what treatment you're going to go on, the melanoma nurse has come and done some sort of tick box with you. I think it's all the overwhelming bit. I think us old stagers are really quite switched on to this because we've got over that initial shock of having melanoma, and I think we can be a lot more starting to look to our wider community. It's not just all about us. It's to do with a lot of other people.
Well, you've just hit the
Thank you.
well.
Yeah, thank you, Mel.
Do you think, though, that with the app, a lot of people who are stage 1, 2, or 3 possibly think, oh, it's just for stage 4 patients?
I agree with you. I think when I first did it, I thought, hang on, this isn't really suitable to keep filling in the surveys. But I
Yeah, that I'm
contacted you
stage
via
3.
email, and you said, no, please keep doing it if you're stage 2 or 1.
Yeah, I'm stage 3, and again, I completed it. And when I completed it, I thought there's a lot of these questions don't really relate to me. And I would say even more so if you were stage 1 or 2, there's a lot of the questions wouldn't relate to you.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, having questions geared to each stage
I
might,
agree. That would be a fantastic idea.
yeah,
Okay.
might be a lot of work, but the questions would be more specific to your stage.
Yeah.
Therefore, at the start, when you sign into, well, I'm stage 1, I can answer those questions, sign in stage 2, and you might get more information from a
Actually,
bigger
that's a
pool.
brilliant idea, because what you could do as an app, whoever's doing the app development, they could basically, when you put in like stage 2, which is what I am, and then it would sort of not show you any questions that are
Like I think, Di, you had said to me at the time, no, keep filling it in. And I must admit, the biggest incentive for me is when I get that email that says, oh, for every £1 that you fill, every survey you complete, there's £1 goes to Melanoma UK. And I fill it in because I think, well, that's an extra £1.
Yeah.
You know, that's my incentive to do it. Otherwise, I'd probably look at it and go, oh, I can't be bothered with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you both. Sorry to interrupt there, Sonia. I just see a couple of hands coming up. If any more sort of thoughts on that front about having stage-specific questions, please do put them in the chat box. But I see there's a couple of hands that have been up for a little while. Susan, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, did I have a hand up?
Yeah.
Well, that must have been a mistake. But I was
Okay.
just going to go back to when someone said their consultant or their nurse tell them about this app and everything. I certainly haven't had anything from any of my my consultant or Macmillan nurses. So maybe it's worth, you know, promoting it to them as well.
I totally agree with you. I'm exactly the same. I stumbled across the app through a Facebook group.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exeter didn't tell me. Dermatology in Barnstaple had no idea about it.
No, I mean, even when I mention melanoma mates, you know, when I'm seeing my consultant or Macmillan nurse, they just pull faces.
Yeah, I've had that.
Yeah. So.
Okay, that's good to know.
Which is bad in a way, really, isn't it? Because you know, by doing what you're doing, it's helping a huge community, gaining research and blah blah blah.
When we launched the study, we contacted essentially all of the melanoma treating centres across the UK to tell them about it. You know, part of that's just, I guess, professional courtesy, because we didn't want patients to be asking them about it and them to feel blindsided at all. So we did that, wrote letters to them, and we also included some of those postcards that many of you may have seen, just explaining the study. But it's also true that we haven't done that for a while. So that might be something to do again relatively soon. And also, when we did that, we could give those clinicians also an update on the study. You know, what progress we've made. Ask them if they would like to see have access to the sort of data for their region, for instance. I mean, that's why we set it up in the first place. And you know, as the study gets longer over time, it becomes more and more useful. We think.
Yeah.
Do you have many in Northern Ireland, Mark?
Oh, I haven't got the dashboards in front of me, but the short answer is certainly not as many as we'd like. We do have some, but let me see if I can tell you while let me look in the background.
Just while you're looking, Mark, Dave and Linda, if you do have questions with your hands up, please do feel free to pop them in the chat box. I'm just going to see that we are the minutes are running down, so I'm just going to move on to.
I've got one very quick question to do with the medical profile before we move on. Surgeries were day surgeries in Exeter, so I filled all that in. Hospitalizations I've put not applicable, because presumably that's for if you're in hospital for more than one day. Is that right? Or
Yeah, maybe on this front, should we catch up over email, Phil? Do you want to send me an email on the melanoma@vitaccess.com, and we can always follow up on there, or do a follow-up session on Zoom or something that might help.
Can do. I mean, it was only a yes or no answer, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Do you want, if you put that question in the chat box? I'm just going to move on for the other parts of this session. So I'm going to move on to the pandemic now, and the impact that that's had on in relation to your melanoma diagnosis or treatment. But if anyone wants to give some words to how, firstly, whether you've received your diagnosis during the lockdown periods, but how, if anything, has changed in relation to your melanoma diagnosis during this time. I don't know whether Adrian or Arlene, Andrew, or...
Well, I'd started chemo just before lockdown started, but that was put on hold sort of through from the end of March through to the end of May, and that was really around not so much the risk of, or it was argued that it wasn't so much a risk of chemo patients being more susceptible to side effects. It was, if not side effects, sorry, to COVID. It was more around, if chemo side effects put me in hospital for any reason, then that was a potentially an avoidable hospital stay that could be mitigated against. So it was sort of to try and reduce any load on the hospital from that perspective. But having said that, during that time, they then sort of redirected me onto radiotherapy, and I had a course of radiotherapy during that time. So actually, during the lockdown, I was out and about more than most people, strangely enough, even though in the shielding category. So yes, it did affect me, but sort of whether it was negatively, I don't think so, to be honest.
Yeah, I started Ipi-Nivo in the February, just before lockdown, and my treatment carried on throughout. The only change is that I'm not having face-to-face consultations now. It's over the phone, which I don't feel that you can ask the questions you want to. It just feels as though the consultant's in a rush, and it's easier to brush you off than actually answer your questions. But saying that, I've had 2 CT scans, I've had all my treatments as plans. Touch wood, I haven't had too many side effects. So it's, apart from having to shield and the loss of being able to go out and everything, it's not been too bad.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Adrian.
I've had very similar to that, because my Pembro continued. I started just before lockdown, and I was only sort of diagnosed in October, operation in January. They moved out to a private hospital near Bath, moved the whole cancer unit out. So that continued very well. The only thing which did affect me was the support services, physio and lymphedema side of things did sort of stop, and that did affect me quite a bit, because I at the time I could have done with that rather than waiting 4 months.
Well, just another thing, so I was in Leicester, so Leicester has been in lockdown most of the time, but my treatment still carried on.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting to know, because I was literally on a call yesterday with non-specific, it wasn't just melanoma, it was across all disease areas, and such a varied amount of feedback. So much so, I am actually just about to send out, would you believe, a survey. So it's coming your way, only because it's really interesting, because we get a lot of major impact, stopped in treatment, couldn't get a scan, doing it, and then you go from the other side where there's not been a major impact, and I think we've got to get a really, you know, a really good handle on how it is now as well. You know, now that the NHS have kind of launched this back to work, back to business, we're here to help you, help us kind of thing. Is anybody really feeling a massive impact now? And you know, psychologically is another big one for us. And I won't go on about it too much because I know time's against us, but it is that bit about, do you want to go for your treatments, or are you afraid that COVID's going to kind of grab hold? I mean, I know on one of our Thursday night calls, a couple of patients said, "Oh, I'm struggling because I don't want to go, but I really do want to go." And it's such a huge subject. But I hope the people on this call will help me with a little bit of a survey that we're gonna be running. I know it's not my melanoma app, but it is COVID related.
Yeah, Di, during that, I did have another mole. I was worried about during lockdown, and the dermatology were very good. I went through my cancer nursing specialist, but dermatology saw me within a week. They saw the mole on the morning, Friday morning. I had the operation in the afternoon, and I was actually used as part of the hospital's comms to get people into the cancer unit, because they'd seen I think they said something like a 60% drop of people they were seeing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I've
so
not
I
had
said
any
that
issues getting appointments and things like that. Like you say, it's, you know, they seem to be available. I don't really, you know, obviously I take precautions regarding COVID, but I wouldn't say I'm scared of it. You know, I've been to several hospitals, been to Mount Vernon, and you know, before you used to have problems getting a parking space, for example, whereas now you got your choice of, you know, 3/4 of the car park is empty now. You know, when you go into the scanner centre, and you know, whereas before there used to be sort of 10 to 12 people sat around, there might be 2 or 3 people sat around. So you know, there obviously is many fewer people go into these appointments. I don't know whether that's because the hospitals are only offering fewer appointments, or whether people are, you know, psychologically afraid of sort of going out and about to them or not. I don't know.
That's a good
thing. You're also being encouraged to go on your own, though, aren't you? So that waiting rooms are often full, certainly up here, with people who don't actually need to be there. So they're sort of saying, certainly, I've had a couple of scans which I know the consultant has had to fight a little bit to get, but you're told to come on your own.
Yeah, true.
And your you know, your appointments they're sticking to appointments a bit better, and some of the side stuff they used to do they're not doing. But all my appointments have been face to face if I've wanted, but I get a phone call first to say, would you like to come in, or are you happy to do it video or phone? And I actually said I'm happy to do it on the phone, and then got a call to say the consultant wasn't happy and he wanted me in face to face, so I had to go in. Quite know why, but so it's been all right up here.
And a note on, just in the last couple of minutes, on the psychological impact, in terms of sort of longer term changes, or the most worrying issue that has been or will be coming up in the future that you think? Does anyone have any thoughts on those?
Well, I hate to be the only sort of keep butting in on this, but for me, you know, when I've seen either James or his registrar, nearly every time I went, and since I've had my craniotomy and my various brain tumours, and I'm in a wheelchair because Dab and Tram gave me heart failure, I need to be in a wheelchair, and my husband, who is my carer at home, is not allowed to be my carer at the Marsden, and I then have to sit in a wheelchair waiting in the main hall to be taken through to outpatients, which is about 50 steps away, and then I have to, he has been with me at every appointment, and to me that is really important. You know, this is his journey as well as mine, And I understand, I understand why they're doing it, but I think there should be a slight relaxation for terminally ill patients, that they are allowed, to have somebody with you.
I think that's a really good point. I was allowed to have my husband with me when I had the appointments for the upstaging of my diagnosis, and then for the subsequent appointments when I had the opportunity to go back and ask more questions. But being stage 4 is relatively new to me, just a month. So knowing now that sort of roughly what the progress of it can be, and how quick it can be, that's obviously a worrying issue. And if you've got somebody with you for a face-to-face appointment, things that you've talked about maybe on the way to the appointment, that the person, or in my case, my husband, might remind me, particularly if it's something that I haven't written down beforehand, although I nearly always go with a list of things that I do want to ask. And for a telephone consultation, you still have to be in the habit of writing the things down that you want to know.
I'll tell you one thing I did, Arlene, is I asked if I could use the WhatsApp, and so David could at least listen to our consultation, even though he wasn't in the hospital. He was sitting in the car park. So
Thank you for
that really helped.
That's a really good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important that if you have somebody with you who can remember what was said, because sometimes you're not taking everything in, are you?
I have actually recorded my session, with my oncologist. I've gone in and set the phone and said, right, I'm going to record this because the last time I was here, I went out and I hadn't asked this question, or I had asked questions and I can't remember what you said, because all of a sudden they start telling you that you've got a scar on your lungs. It might be, it might not be, and as soon as you hear those words, you're going, what are they talking about? And the blank comes over you, and anything they say after that, you might as well, it just goes whoop, over your top of your head, So I actually record mine now, so I have something to remind me on, and I would listen back to it as I'm lying in bed that night thinking, right, what did he actually say, and what did that mean, and those sort of things. So,
and that's one of the things that we wanted to, we've got on our list to build into the app, to have I know we can do that with smartphones, or any old smartphone, but actually to have that as part of the app, so that you could see the different potentially recordings that you made over time, and have it with all the other stuff. Now, just to say, if anyone doesn't do that, you don't need to ask, actually, in the UK, that you don't have, as long as you don't publish it on YouTube, which of course no one would. It just counts as your own personal note taking, a bit like pen and paper, but for the 21st century. So lots of people do find that very useful.
Good idea. Yeah, I feel very lucky, because I was diagnosed stage 3 melanoma 7 years ago, which moved to stage 4 within the next year, and I was a super responder to ipilimumab, and the melanoma is very much under control, and I've stabilized. So I'm just having CT scans every 12 months, and but they did diagnose 7 years ago that I had a benign brain tumor, which a meningioma, which they said that would, if it kept growing, would create problems in due course. And I had that removed last year because it had grown by 25% in the 6 years. And the only problem I've got with that at the moment is that I'm not allowed to drive. So my wife has to drive me everywhere. But that's no real problem.
They found one of those in my initial CT scan, which they thought had been there for years, because of the discoloration on the underside of the skull, which makes you think the technology is just absolutely amazing. It's thankfully stable.
Yeah, well, they told me I had this meningioma, which, because it's benign, wouldn't be a problem unless it kept growing, which obviously it did. And I didn't realize where it was, because they said it's between the lining of the brain, the meninges, and your skull. I presumed it was somewhere on the top of my head.
Mm.
In fact, mine was between my eyes, above my nose, size of a golf ball. And my neurosurgeon said he was amazed I wasn't getting blinding headaches and blurred vision. But my only sort of drawback from since my operation is that I now have no sense of smell. They basically sealed off my nose from my brain. So, but again, not a real problem.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Sorry, Sonia, Arlene, Mel as well for disclosing and sharing with us those insights. So I see that we're just over by 1 minute. So just want to echo Mark's message in the chat box to thank you all very, very much for your help today. It's been a really rich discussion. I know we haven't got through all of our questions, so we'll have a think about how best to maybe proceed with that and maybe reach out to you. If you're not happy for us to do that, then please let us know. And any other questions or thoughts and suggestions that you do have, please feel free to email the melanoma, which is on the screen at the minute, melanoma@vitaccess.com, and that comes through to us all. But yes, thank you once again, and hope to
put that in
see
the chat. Sorry, can you put that in the chat so we can cut and paste it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, while Casey's doing that, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for today and your ongoing support with Melanoma UK and everything that we ask of you. Because I know I am a little bit, can you do this? Can you help us with that? But it's not going to stop. I think, who was it before? Was it Mel who said these surveys and things that we do, they're not just falling into the abyss. We are actually doing a lot of work, and it doesn't maybe come out on these calls how many posters that are getting put up at the different seminars that are still virtually happening. So the information, the nuggets that we're capturing over the time frame that we've been doing this are actually leading into something much bigger. We need more patients using the app, so I'm relying on you to kind of give us the valuable feedback, but also spread the word. Couple of things from me. At one point that came up very early on in the call, which was the hospital database and the medical centres changing. We tried to do this a year ago, nothing to do with the app. This was for our website and it was a nightmare. However, we're not giving up. Another thing I'm maybe asking for some support on, because hospitals change, areas closed down, we've got to capture this. And that will then ultimately feed into the app. So that's one point. And the next bit is, I don't know anyone who knows Professor James Larkin. I think obviously under him, but we're doing a webinar and James is joining us, and I'm giving you like the insight because obviously I think it's going to be a really popular webinar. Looking for the 5th of October, again, not my melanoma app related, but isn't it amazing that we've got one of our medical advisors coming on and doing an overview of how the landscape is now in melanoma. So I will send a separate email to you guys and thank you for participating today. If you can join that webinar, it will be brilliant to have you on board. If you can't, we'll be recording it, so no worries. But before we sell out, it's going to be a sellout with the Prof. Prof Larkin is going to be a sellout. So anyone who wants to jump on that, I will send you an email, get you a separate ticket, a VIP ticket. And
well, there's got to be a first.
Well, you know what? You'll be like that. Oh, James. I'm glad to see you. But for anyone who doesn't know Professor Larkin, yeah, he's one of the best, if not the. So just those things, and a massive thank you from me. Sorry to hijack the end of the meeting, but you know what I'm like. So, Casey, I don't know whether there's anything else that we need our wonderful people to do, or are we good to go?
We're good to go, yeah. Thank you once again. And yeah, hope to speak to you again soon.